Hi, I'm Mylon Smith, and this is Joe Byers, and this is the Kookville Podcast. We're going to talk a little bit about Kookville, which is a local independent TV show that we're doing here in Pensacola, Florida. And then we'll just talk about whatever comes into our brains. What we want to do is talk a little bit about where we want to go with Kookville. We shot 10 episodes, and we have gotten 3 episodes edited and sent out to Film Hub, and we're working on the other 7. And it's been quite a little journey trying to get from point A to point Z. And there's been production issues, there's been editing issues, and of course, now we're partly in editing and partly in the marketing of Kookville, or how to market it. Hopefully we'll get the other 7 done within the next few months, but editing is a slow, difficult process. We just talked to a editor a couple nights ago to finish up one of our episodes, and hopefully we'll be done with that by the end of the month. But maybe we should talk a little bit about the marketing, Joe?
Sure.
What we were thinking about doing is doing a lot of small sketches, and of course the podcast to sort of publicize what we're doing. And with any luck, we'll get out to a wider audience. Joe has been writing some really great Skunk Ape Boy sketches. Joe is one of our Skunk Ape boys, and these guys, they just do a lot of like crazy, stupid stuff. Joe, tell us a little bit about the Skunk Ape boys and your part in it.
So the Skunk Ape boys are a couple of backwoodsmen, I guess you would say. They're trappers, hunters, fishermen, outdoor enthusiasts, and they also claim to have trapped a skunk ape, which is basically like a Florida version of Bigfoot. They claim to have trapped one in a 10-foot hole, and in the process of tranquilizing him, he got away and left them in the hole and drove off in their truck. So there may be a credibility issue with these guys. As the actor for one of them, I don't look at it that way. Everything I think my character is doing is dead solid truthful. But, there's kind of a little bit of ambivalence about that in the show. But the boys are not exactly pranksters. I would say they're very serious about the stuff that they come up with, but that probably looks like a bunch of BS to people on the outside, especially to Dominic, who's the reporter and who's the enfant terrible that the boys keep having encounters with. And one of the things that kind of came up in the process of creating these characters was that you've got 2 guys who basically complete each other's thoughts, sort of like twins, but they're different ages. They don't look anything alike. They don't have the same parents, but they consider themselves twins. They can kind of finish each other's thoughts. They think that everything more or less the same way. So it's this kind of peculiar notion that you have identical twins and all the issues that, or the really weird things that identical twins sometimes are able to pull off by just completing each other. The boys are like that, but they're not twins. Like there's been a little bit of this, a little conceit throughout the show is that you're never sure who's Ernie and who's James, and that not only extends to the people around them, it extends to them as well. They're not sure who Ernie is and who James is. Typically, I'm Ernie and Shannon is James, but that's not always necessarily written in stone. So that kind of gives you an idea that these are different kind of people.
See, I would say that they're pranksters. They like tormenting Dominic. They come along telling him this the story about. I'm sorry. Forgive me. We have a little guest here. You know what? I just forgot what I was going to say.
You were going to say that you thought that they were pranksters, and you were going to have some kind of an explanation for that. But of course, I have to tell you, I don't agree with that at all. I don't think that they're pranksters. I think that everything that they do and say is the unvarnished truth, at least to their way of thinking. Now, they are known sassafras users. They found a strain of sassafras that has mind-altering properties, and they're users of that. So we're not always certain whether they're unreliable narrators or not. But as far as they're concerned, at least in my opinion, that everything that they say and do is as presented. But you have a difference of opinion about it.
Well, they did put a gator into one of their neighbors' chicken coop.
Yes, but that was a paid job. Remember, that was a paid job, and it was paid by Dominic.
So that makes it better. That makes it okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you're being contracted to do something, that's not exactly a prank. It might be malfeasance, but it's not necessarily a prank.
I see.
The boys have their own ethos. Let's just put it that way.
Oh, really?
I don't think that they would prank Dominic, or Alec Fielding, but because they were writing an imbalance between Alec Fielding pranks Dominic, and so Dominic hires the boys to prank Alec Fielding back, and I think that maybe their sense of backwoods justice is that they're just helping somebody even the scales. And they did for money. So there's that too.
Okay, so they were paid to do a job instead of doing it just for fun. That's a difference. Okay, excellent. I like that. That's a good way of slithering out of it. Well, anyway, so what we're hoping to do is do some sketches focused on the Skunk Ape Boys, them telling tall tales, and put that out on YouTube and other social media. That's just one of the things we intend to do. We have other sketches we plan on recording here in the next few months. Our focus has been mainly on just getting things edited, which has been difficult. When you have 10 episodes that you're trying to juggle and trying to keep them all in order in your head is not easy. In fact, when we were trying to shoot these things, we were having trouble remembering, what episode's coming next.
Sometimes we were having trouble remembering what episode we were shooting.
Right. So, but we're getting better at it. That's a nice thing. I'm sorry, I'm watching Joe's dog over here as he's causing problems. I want to make sure he doesn't do any real damage. Anyway, we hope to shoot a second season in early 2027. That depends a lot on whether or not we get the episodes out and we make enough money that we can go forward. So we're hoping a lot because I've already got the episodes written. I have to do some editing on them, but they're basically done. So I'm really eager. In fact, I've got parts of 3, 4, and 5, seasons 3, 4, and 5 already done.
Wow.
So with any luck, we'll be able to do another, 4 seasons after this first season. And as you can see, Joe's dog is being very playful up here. But what do you think, Joe? What's been the biggest trouble we've had? so far?
Gee, that's a whole litany of stuff that's gone wrong and just kind of thrown us for a loop. The thing we've had the most trouble with, it's probably maybe locations. I mean, we have locations set aside, but when you beg and borrow a location, you have to kind of work around the people that are loaning you their building or their offices or whatever the case may be. You have to kind of work around their schedule. And if it's not that case, if you're doing it out in the public somewhere, well, there's always something. You get to a location and there's a helicopter destroying the sound, and the helicopter flies off. And somebody with a leaf blower shows up, or running a lawnmower. And it's just locations. You start understanding why they shoot so many movies on sound stages.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly certain how they do TV shows and movies that are done on location without tearing their hair out, because when you're outside, there's only so much control that you can have. But we live in West Florida. We get a lot of wind, for example, and the wind starts blowing enough, your audio gets destroyed. So that's not exactly location, but it is tied to location. If you were inside, you wouldn't have the wind issue, but you might have some other issue. So to me, that's probably the most insidious one. But I don't know. If I thought about that, I could come up with about 4 or 5 other things that are equally.
Well, you bring up a really good point about this, about the sound issues and locations and stuff like this. The shows that I like the best, the sitcoms I like the best, are the ones where they're not on a. Excuse me. Hey, stop it! Stop. Joe's dog are getting a little active right there. I like the sitcoms where they kind of get out of the studio space. They get out into the real world. And I'll give you an example. Community, particularly in the earlier seasons, they would actually get out on the grounds or get out into the real world a little bit. Where a lot of the traditional sitcoms, they were always in the studio space, usually because they had a live studio audience. I never liked those kind of shows. I never really enjoyed them. Of course, I didn't enjoy laugh tracks either. I think it's called sweetening, and I always thought of laugh tracks as Satan's sweetener. But I like the sitcoms. I'll give you an example: Scrubs, Community. What else do we have?
The Office.
The Office. I love The Office. Those 3, for example. There's another one, which I'm not sure if you can call it as a sitcom or not. It's called Reaper. It only lasted for like a season and a half, but it was a comedy. Well, sorry about that. We just had a connection issue. But we're now back, and we were talking about sitcoms. Kookville is a sitcom, and to some degree, it's a workplace sitcom because Dominic, a lot of his action, a lot of his interactions come through his job as a reporter. Part of the reason of making him a reporter is that reporters pretty much go everywhere. And they get to see a lot of different people. Of course, it's a small town, so we'd probably meet a lot of these folks anyway, but this makes it a little bit easier to do that. But we were talking about our favorite sitcoms. Mine is Superstore, The Office, Scrubs, and Community. I think those are my big 4. What about you, Joe?
I'm really kind of more of a movie person than I am a sitcom person. I have a much more high tolerance of sitcoms than you do. The canned laughter doesn't necessarily bother me. It depends on the show, but it it's not something that I really can call up. I mean, I liked Community a lot. I thought that was a brilliant show. And I really liked The Office. After The Office was off of broadcast, I got access to it and I sat down and watched the whole show from the first episode to the last episode. Right. And I really enjoyed that. So that's probably a couple of my favorites. But I mean, like I said, I have a pretty high tolerance for all kinds of different sitcoms. Some of them old sitcoms, like the old Dick Van Dyke Show. I really think that was quite brilliantly written. Right. So that's kind of my take on things. I know I'm not as discerning as you are.
One of our actresses told me I was a snob when it comes to TV.
Well, you might have a point.
She's probably right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, everybody is snobby about something. Sure. Like I'm kind of snobby about really bad films. I think that there's something to really bad films. I find them quite delicious sometimes watching them.
Right.
And having worked on this series and some other things, I think I have kind of an appreciation sometimes for how badly things look, but why it might be that case.
Right.
Because in real life, things are just what they are. But if it's in a movie, it was in a movie because it was either placed there, they got lucky, or they got unlucky, as the case may be. But nothing is there really by accident. So if, for example, somebody is walking through a alleyway and it's got a bunch of broken down cars, when you watch a film, you just accept that, yeah, it's an alley with a bunch of broken down cars. But from a producer standpoint, somebody had to move those cars into an alley or find an alley that had a bunch of broken down cars and shoot it. So there aren't any accidents in that sense. And if you're looking for an alley full of broken down cars, where are you going to find that? You might get lucky, but your like is not to get lucky. So you're going to have to come up with renting a bunch or buying a bunch of old clunkers and having them towed and put into place. And, you know, that starts adding up for a low budget production. Okay. Even that kind of expense is pretty daunting. So when I watch bad films, I'm mindful of all the things that must have gone on for those people trying to put this together. And also I'm struck with the idea that, you know, somebody probably loved this. It may be a terrible movie. It may have bad production values. It may be all kinds of cinematic no-nos they commit, and may be full of some of the most shoddy acting in the world. But somebody still loved it. Somebody loved enough to sit down and write. And maybe they were a bad writer. You know, the script was terrible to begin with. But still, they cared enough to write it down. So I have kind of an appreciation for those bad films, and sometimes they're unintentionally hilarious.
Yeah.
Open your minds is all I'm saying, people. Watch a bad film every now and again and enjoy what you're seeing.
It's not always easy to do. I've watched some of the stuff you've recommended, and it was painful. But you notice how we started talking about sitcoms, and you brought the conversation back to bad movies. Did you notice that?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I like bad movies. Apparently, that's why I came back around on it. But there's, you know, but from our standpoint, we're trying to do this with the most minuscule of budgets.
Sure. Yeah.
And every shot has to be figured out. Now, yeah. I guess that's true for any movie. But if I had a big enough budget, you know what, Mylan, I don't like that wall there. Have the carpenters move it back 4 feet.
I like that idea.
Yeah, you like that idea, but that's not going to happen for us. So what happens for small production budgets or small budget productions is that you have to shoot around everything.
Yeah.
And you have to find a solution for everything. And if you see something on camera, especially something that looks pretty cool, like I said, they either figured out how to make it work, or they got lucky, or sometimes, again, they got unlucky.
Yeah.
You know, they have to shoot this thing in the morning, but they're shooting into the rising sun. If they shoot in the afternoon, it would be fine, but they can't because there are people are using the businesses there. So it has to be done in the morning before so-and-so.
Right.
So it's the kind of thing that you really kind of tear your hair out over. And it makes me appreciate people who shoot with no budgets, what they're living through.
Yeah, we've had to shoot around what we found, what we face. On, you know, a really good example of this. We started off Kookville as a web series, and we had access to this really cool. I'd say it's convenience store because it was more than a convenience store. It was like halfway to being a grocery store. People would do a lot of their shopping there for
kind of rustic
stuff. Yeah, it's very rustic. It was a really cool place. They had all kinds of stuffed animals and traps and things like that. It was really, really cool. And we tried to get access to it for the TV show. But the people who owned it had sold it to new owners, and they never bothered calling me back. I tried like hell, but they wouldn't, talk to me. So I had to write stuff without using that, which was painful because it was such a fantastic place. It screamed Kookville. It really did. And so we had to start writing around what we could have access to, which, I mean, to me, that's kind of fun to do to some degree. It's like, how creative can you be? But I really had my heart set on that one location because it was so good. They had a skunk ape.
Yeah.
On the wall, and it was perfect. And really suited for the Skunk Ape Boys kind of a thing, although they looked down on it, saying it wasn't real. But, it was real enough for the show. But it's frustrating.
Yeah. The problem is that even if you secure a location, you don't know what you're going to find when you get there. Like we shot a great bar, and they were so accommodating and so nice.
Yeah.
They had daiquiri machines that didn't turn off.
Yeah.
So a lot of the audio that we shot in that bar was problematic because of these daiquiri machines running. So perfect location, was great. We just needed it without the daiquiri machines. But of course, we're using something by the good graces of the owners. So you just have to deal with what you have to deal with.
Yeah.
So it's always something. That's all I'm saying. It's always something.
Yeah, definitely. But, we got through it, got through the first season. And as long as we don't lose any of our locations, we're set for the second season. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. It's interesting to see where some of these characters are going to go, what the development's going to be like for them.
Yeah.
Will the Skunk Ape Boys ever find love? It's that kind of thing. I just want Mylan to write in a love scene for an almost 70-year-old man with a long gray beard. That's the only reason I'm in the show.
I'll work on that. Skunk Ape Boys.
Just don't have me my love interest being a female skunk ape. That's all I can say. Because I think they smell pretty bad.
I love the idea, though. You making out with a skunk ape.
Now, let's do it where Shannon makes out with the skunk ape. That would be better. If you're going to do that, make it with the other guy.
We'll flip a coin and see how it works.
Or they're both into her. given that they're twins. Maybe that could be an episode.
Yeah, could be. Okay, well, sorry about the connection issues that we had with this episode. We've had a number of issues, including the doggos, which were fun, but it did throw our mojo off a little bit here. But this is episode 2 of the Kookville Podcast. And hopefully in the next few weeks, we will have an episode 3. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time.